That tiny ink stain on your favorite shirt may look like a disaster, but before you throw it away, there is something you need to see. Emily Carter had always believed that most household problems had a simple solution hidden somewhere nearby. She loved finding practical ways to save time, money, and the things people cared about. But one ordinary afternoon, a small accident turned into a challenge she could not ignore. While organizing her home office, a ballpoint pen slipped from the desk and left a dark ink mark across one of her favorite light-colored cotton shirts. It was the kind of stain that instantly caught attention, the kind that made people think the fabric was ruined forever. Emily looked at the mark carefully and remembered all the cleaning tips she had heard over the years. Some people said one method worked perfectly. Others claimed completely different solutions were the answer. But how many of those tricks actually worked in real life? Instead of guessing, Emily decided to find out. She placed the stained shirt on her kitchen table, gathered the most common household solutions people recommend, and began a simple experiment. Her goal was not just to remove one stain. She wanted to discover which methods were truly useful and which ones only sounded good. The first thing she noticed was how quickly the ink had absorbed into the fabric. A fresh stain might seem small, but ink behaves differently from ordinary dirt. It can spread, settle into fibers, and become much harder to remove if handled the wrong way. Emily knew that rushing without understanding the problem could make the situation worse. So she decided to approach it like a real test. She would compare different approaches, observe the results, and find the method that gave the best outcome. As she prepared the experiment, Emily thought about how often people face situations like this. A child's shirt after school, a work uniform during a busy day, a favorite piece of clothing that suddenly gets marked. These moments happen in many homes, and the first reaction is often frustration. But sometimes the difference between saving something and giving up comes down to knowing the right steps. Emily started documenting everything carefully. She recorded the condition of the stain, the material of the fabric, and each method she planned to test. There would be no guessing and no relying on random advice. Only real results. The small ink mark on the shirt had created a bigger question. What is the best way to remove ballpoint ink stains at home? And by the end of this experiment, Emily hoped to find the answer that could help anyone facing the same frustrating problem. Because sometimes the simplest household challenges reveal the most useful discoveries when they are tested the right way. Before trying to remove any ink stain, there is one important thing most people do not realize. Understanding the stain itself can make the difference between success and failure. Emily Carter looked at the marked cotton shirt on her kitchen table and knew that simply wiping the ink away was not the right approach. The first step in solving any cleaning problem is knowing what you are dealing with. Ink is different from everyday dirt because it is designed to stay visible. The color comes from pigments and dyes that are carried by liquid, allowing the ink to flow smoothly from a pen onto paper or another surface. But when that same ink reaches fabric, the fibers can quickly absorb those color particles. That is why a small mark can become such a frustrating problem. Emily carefully examined the stain before testing any method. She noticed that the ink had created a concentrated area in the center, with lighter edges where the liquid had started spreading. This was exactly why many common cleaning mistakes happen. People often react quickly and start rubbing the area, hoping the stain will disappear. However, aggressive rubbing can push the ink deeper into the fabric instead of lifting it away. Emily wanted her experiment to focus on patience and observation rather than quick guesses. She prepared a clean workspace with good lighting and placed the shirt on a flat surface. She wanted every result to be easy to compare. The goal was simple: find out which method could help remove the stain while protecting the fabric. As she reviewed different household recommendations, Emily noticed something interesting. Many cleaning tips sounded convincing, but not all advice was based on careful testing. Some methods were shared because someone heard about them from another person, while others were recommended because they worked well in a specific situation. But fabrics, ink types, and conditions can be different from one case to another. A method that works on one material may not always provide the same results somewhere else. That was why Emily decided to test everything step by step. She wanted to separate popular beliefs from reliable solutions. She also considered the timing of the stain. Fresh ink and older ink marks can behave differently because the longer the stain remains, the more opportunity the ink has to settle into the fibers. This meant every detail mattered. The fabric type, the amount of ink, and the way the stain was treated could all influence the final result. Emily wrote down her observations and prepared for the next stage of the experiment. The shirt on her table was no longer just a piece of clothing with an annoying mark. It had become a small challenge that could reveal a valuable lesson about cleaning. Before choosing the best solution, she needed to discover which popular methods actually worked and which ones failed when tested in a real home environment. The first real test was about to begin, and Emily Carter knew that this was the moment where many cleaning tips either proved their value or failed completely. She placed the stained cotton shirt under the bright kitchen light and looked at the ink mark one more time. There was no rushing, no random scrubbing, and no guessing. Every step needed to be careful because the goal was not just to make the stain disappear. The goal was to understand which method could actually protect the fabric while improving the appearance of the shirt. Emily started with one of the most common approaches people recommend for ink stains. She prepared the materials, followed the basic instructions carefully, and applied the method to a small area first. This was an important step because different fabrics can react differently, and testing a small section helps prevent unexpected results. As she waited and observed, Emily noticed that the process required patience. The stain did not instantly disappear like many online demonstrations suggest. Real life was different. The fabric, the amount of ink, and the time the stain had been sitting all played a role. After a few moments, Emily checked the result closely. The ink mark looked slightly different, but the improvement was not as dramatic as she hoped. The method had some effect, but it was not the complete solution she was searching for. Instead of being disappointed, Emily considered this a valuable discovery. A failed test was still useful because it helped eliminate a method that might not be the best choice. She recorded the result in her notebook and moved on to the next possibility. This was the reason she wanted to conduct a real experiment, instead of simply repeating popular advice. A cleaning method should be judged by the result, not by how often people talk about it. Emily continued comparing the condition of the fabric before and after each attempt. She paid attention to whether the ink became lighter, whether the material remained unchanged, and whether the process was practical for an average household. She also thought about convenience. A good home solution should not require complicated equipment or expensive products that most people do not already have. As the experiment continued, Emily began to notice a pattern. Some methods sounded impressive when explained, but their actual performance was much less convincing. The difference between a good cleaning tip and a disappointing one was becoming clearer. The first test had provided an important lesson. Not every popular method deserves to be trusted without proof. With the results written down, Emily prepared for the next stage of her experiment. The shirt still had a visible ink mark, but the process had already revealed something important. Finding the right solution was not about trying the most popular idea first. It was about testing carefully, learning from each result, and discovering what truly works in a real home. After the first test revealed that not every popular cleaning method could deliver the results people expected, Emily Carter continued her experiment with a more careful approach. She returned to the stained cotton shirt on her kitchen table and reviewed everything she had learned so far. The first attempt had shown her that removing ink was not about simply applying a product and hoping for the best. It required understanding the stain, choosing the right technique, and paying attention to how the fabric responded. For the next stage, Emily decided to compare additional household solutions that many people recommend. She organized each test carefully, using the same type of fabric and the same stained area whenever possible. This allowed her to make a fair comparison and see which methods actually created a noticeable difference. Emily knew that a true home cleaning solution should be realistic. Most people do not want a complicated process that requires special equipment or expensive supplies. They want something simple, practical, and easy to follow in everyday life. As she continued testing, Emily noticed that small details had a major impact on the results. The amount of solution used, the time allowed for it to work, and the way the fabric was handled all influenced the outcome. A method that seemed promising at first could produce a disappointing result if used incorrectly. This was why she focused on following each step carefully rather than rushing through the process. One of the biggest lessons Emily discovered was that cleaning was often about patience. Many people expect instant results because online videos sometimes make difficult tasks look effortless. But real household problems usually require attention and consistency. A stain that has absorbed into fabric needs time and the right approach. Emily documented every change she saw. She compared the original ink mark with the condition after each test and looked for improvements that were easy to recognize. Some methods helped reduce the appearance of the stain, while others showed very little progress. Slowly, the differences between effective and ineffective solutions became clearer. The experiment was turning into more than just a search for a cleaning trick. It was becoming a lesson about making better decisions at home. Instead of wasting time trying random ideas, people could learn to test solutions logically and understand why certain methods work better than others. As the afternoon continued, Emily prepared for the next important step. The early tests had eliminated some common choices, but she still had not found the method that could provide the best balance between effectiveness and simplicity. The stained shirt remained on the table as a reminder of the original challenge. But now, Emily was closer to discovering the approach that could truly make a difference. The next test would reveal whether the right solution had finally been found. The moment Emily Carter had been waiting for had finally arrived. After several careful tests, comparisons, and observations, she was ready to try the method that showed the most promise. She looked at the stained cotton shirt on her kitchen table and remembered how frustrating the ink mark had seemed at the beginning. What started as a simple household accident had turned into a detailed experiment that revealed an important lesson. The right approach matters more than quick guesses. Emily prepared everything she needed and reviewed the process one more time before beginning. She wanted to make sure every step was done carefully because the goal was not just to improve the appearance of the shirt, but also to protect the fabric. She started by preparing the stained area and applying the solution in a controlled way. Instead of rushing, she allowed the method to work gradually while observing the changes. As the minutes passed, Emily noticed something different compared with the earlier attempts. The ink mark was beginning to change more noticeably. The improvement was not instant or dramatic like a movie scene, but it was real and visible. The darker areas started becoming lighter, showing that the method was helping lift the stain from the fabric. Emily continued following the process patiently, remembering that many cleaning mistakes happen when people become too impatient and try to force results. One of the biggest differences she noticed was that this method focused on working with the stain instead of fighting against it. The previous tests had taught her that aggressive actions were not always the answer. Sometimes, a careful and consistent approach could achieve a better result. Emily documented the progress with notes and photos, comparing the shirt before and during the process. The difference became clearer with each step. The fabric looked cleaner, and the ink mark was far less noticeable than before. For Emily, this was the moment the experiment became meaningful. She was not just finding a way to clean one shirt. She was discovering a practical lesson that could help people handle similar problems in their own homes. She thought about how many people throw away clothing or spend money replacing items because they believe certain stains cannot be removed. But with the right knowledge and a little patience, many household problems can have a simple solution. As the test continued, Emily carefully completed the final steps and examined the result under natural light. The shirt was not only a reminder of the original problem, but also proof that testing and understanding could lead to better answers. The experiment was not finished yet. Emily still wanted to see how this method would perform on different materials and situations. But one thing was already clear. After comparing multiple approaches, she had finally found a method that showed real potential, and the next challenge would be discovering whether it could deliver the same results beyond one piece of fabric. After discovering that the promising method could successfully improve the appearance of the ink stain on the cotton shirt, Emily Carter decided that the next step was to see whether the result could be trusted in different situations. A single successful test was encouraging, but a real home solution needed to be practical beyond one example. Emily knew that people deal with many different materials every day, from clothing and household fabrics to items that are used regularly around the home. She wanted to understand how the method performed when conditions changed. The first material Emily tested was denim. Unlike lightweight cotton, denim has a thicker weave and a different texture. She carefully prepared a small stained area and followed the same process she had used before. As she observed the results, she noticed that patience remained one of the most important parts of the process. The stain responded gradually, and the improvement became clearer over time. Emily recorded the changes and compared the result with the original condition. The method continued to show positive results, proving that the approach was not only useful for one specific type of fabric. Next, Emily tested another common household situation. She considered how often people accidentally mark everyday items with pens during work, school, or personal projects. A useful cleaning technique should fit into normal life, not require a complicated routine that people avoid using. This was one reason Emily focused so much on practicality. She wanted a method that ordinary families could realistically follow. During the testing process, Emily also noticed another important lesson. The sooner a person responds to an ink stain, the better the opportunity for improvement. Waiting too long can allow the ink to settle deeper into the material, making the cleaning process more challenging. This did not mean older stains were impossible, but it showed why quick action and the right technique could make a significant difference. Emily continued writing down every observation. She compared the materials, the amount of improvement, and how simple the process was to complete. The experiment had now become a complete learning experience rather than just a search for a quick fix. She realized that the best household solutions are not always the ones with the biggest promises. They are the ones that combine effectiveness, simplicity, and reliability. By the end of the testing stage, Emily had a clearer understanding of why this method worked better than many common suggestions. It was not because of a complicated secret or an expensive product. It was because the process respected how stains interact with different materials and required careful application. Looking back at the original ink mark on her favorite shirt, Emily smiled. What began as a frustrating accident had turned into a useful discovery. But before sharing her final recommendation, she still wanted to review the most common mistakes people make when trying to remove ink stains, because even the best method can fail if it is used the wrong way. After several successful tests, Emily Carter had learned that finding the right cleaning method was only part of the solution. The other important part was understanding what could cause a good method to fail. Many people try to remove ink stains with the right intention, but make simple mistakes that reduce their chances of getting a better result. Emily wanted to highlight these mistakes because knowing what not to do can be just as valuable as knowing what works. The first mistake she noticed was acting too quickly without understanding the stain. When people see ink on clothing, the first reaction is often to grab a towel and start rubbing immediately. However, Emily discovered through her experiment that rushing can create more challenges. Instead of carefully lifting the stain, too much pressure can spread the ink into a larger area and make the mark more noticeable. Another common mistake is using too much of a cleaning solution. Many people assume that more product means better results, but Emily found that a careful amount applied properly was much more effective than using excessive amounts. The goal was not to overwhelm the fabric, but to allow the solution to work gradually. Emily also noticed that many people skip an important step, testing a small hidden area first. Different fabrics can react in different ways, and what works well on one material may not always be the best choice for another. A quick test can help protect clothing and prevent unwanted changes to the fabric. Another mistake was giving up too soon. Some people expect stains to disappear instantly, but real cleaning often requires patience. The experiment showed Emily that gradual improvement was a sign of progress. A method does not always need to create an immediate dramatic change to be effective. Consistent results matter more than quick appearances. Emily also learned that drying the item before the stain is fully treated can make the situation more difficult. Taking time to check the progress before completing the process gives a better chance of achieving the desired outcome. As she reviewed all the information from her experiment, Emily realized that successful cleaning was not just about having the right materials. It was about using them correctly. Knowledge, patience, and attention to detail were the real tools behind the results. The stained shirt on her kitchen table had become a reminder that small problems often become easier when approached with the right mindset. By avoiding these common mistakes, people could improve their chances of saving their favorite items instead of replacing them. Emily was now ready for the final stage of her experiment, comparing the original stain with the completed result and showing exactly how much difference the right approach could make. The final comparison was the moment Emily Carter had been working toward from the beginning. After testing different approaches, observing the results, and learning what mistakes to avoid, she was ready to look back at the entire process and see the true difference. The same cotton shirt that had started this experiment with a noticeable ink mark was now placed on the kitchen table under natural daylight. Emily wanted the final review to be simple and honest. She placed the original image of the stained shirt beside the current condition of the fabric and carefully compared the two. The difference was clear. The dark ink mark that had once stood out against the light fabric was now greatly reduced, showing how much the right method and careful process could improve the appearance of the material. For Emily, the most important part of the experiment was not just the result. It was understanding why the result happened. She had learned that successful cleaning was not about finding a magical trick that works instantly. It was about using the right approach, being patient, and respecting the material being treated. Throughout the experiment, Emily had tested different ideas, eliminated methods that did not perform well, and discovered that simple solutions could sometimes provide impressive results when used correctly. She reviewed each stage of the process and noticed how much her understanding had changed. At the beginning, the ink stain seemed like a small problem with a frustrating answer. But after careful testing, it became a reminder that many household challenges can be solved with knowledge and preparation. Emily also considered how this information could help others. A favorite shirt, a work outfit, or an everyday item does not always need to be replaced because of a simple accident. Sometimes, the right information can help people save money and keep the things they value. The experiment also showed the importance of realistic expectations. Not every stain will disappear exactly the same way, because different materials and conditions can affect the outcome. However, using a proven method and avoiding common mistakes can create a much better chance of success. Emily looked again at the shirt and smiled. What began as an unexpected ink mark had turned into a useful lesson about problem-solving at home. The final result was not only about a cleaner piece of fabric. It was about discovering a practical method through careful testing. As she prepared to share her findings, Emily knew that the most valuable part of the experiment was not one single product or technique. It was the process of learning what works, understanding why it works, and helping others approach everyday problems with more confidence. The small stain that created the challenge had finally revealed the solution, proving that simple home experiments can lead to surprisingly helpful discoveries. After completing the experiment, Emily Carter looked back at everything she had discovered from the first moment she noticed the ink stain to the final result. What started as a small accident had become a valuable lesson about solving everyday problems with patience, careful testing, and the right information. The stained cotton shirt that once seemed difficult to restore had shown her that many household challenges are not as impossible as they first appear. The biggest lesson Emily learned was that successful cleaning is not about searching for a quick miracle. It is about understanding the problem, choosing the right approach, and following each step with care. During the experiment, she tested different ideas, observed the changes, and discovered that some popular methods were not as effective as people often believed. She also learned that simple mistakes could affect the outcome, even when someone has the right solution. Rushing, using too much product, or ignoring the material can make a cleaning task more challenging. Emily wanted others to understand that a little knowledge can prevent unnecessary frustration. She thought about how many people throw away clothing or replace household items because they assume a stain cannot be improved. But sometimes, the answer is already available at home. It only requires the right technique and a little confidence. The experiment also reminded Emily that every situation is different. The type of fabric, the age of the stain, and the way the item is treated can all influence the final result. There is no single answer that works exactly the same for every situation, but understanding the basic principles gives people a much better chance of success. As Emily placed the clean shirt back in her closet, she smiled at how much had changed. The shirt was no longer just an item that almost became a forgotten piece of clothing. It represented curiosity, learning, and the value of testing ideas instead of accepting assumptions. She knew that many people would face similar moments in their own homes, whether it was a mark on clothing, a forgotten stain, or another unexpected problem. The best solutions often come from taking the time to understand the challenge before trying to fix it. Emily's simple experiment proved that practical knowledge can make everyday life easier. A small ink stain created an opportunity to discover something useful, and the final lesson was clear. When a problem appears, the first step is not to give up. It is to learn, test, and find the approach that truly works. Sometimes the simplest discoveries can make the biggest difference in the things we use and value every day.